Good evening.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going. Nah, everything's good. I just forgot how many aches you get when you actually train hard.
How's your rib?
Seems to be doing fine.
All right.
There's there's that ever so slight not normal feeling, but like it's been that way for weeks. So it's almost like, is this just the new normal feeling,
Yeah,
or is it,
I think that's middle age, right?
probably. Definitely happens a lot, like, with all sorts of aches, like, neck, sleeping the wrong. Okay, great. Is this going to heal, or is this now the way it feels?
Yeah, I miss being rubbery and bendy, or bendier and rubberier. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Uh,
I was just going to
yeah.
respond back with, so how are you?
I'm doing all right. I am. I'll just briefly say, went to the doctor last week, did my blood work and all that kind of stuff, and the doc was pretty pleased. Officially from on their charts, I've lost 30 pounds, and all of my everything that came back from the blood work is in a better place, and I think all but one item. I think my LDLs is either in the healthy range or like in the healthy range or on the edge of the healthy range, within the healthy range, and that my LDLs was the only thing that was outside the healthy range, but it was also on the edge of the healthy range.
So far, so good.
So yeah, all good. Everything moving in the right direction.
Congratulations on the 30 pounds, even though it may be a little more-ish. Who knows?
Yeah,
It's around there. That
yeah.
Depending on whether you're going by what they're tracking or what you're tracking.
Yeah, no, we'll totally call it that. I'll take that as the official. So, and then like looking at their scale, because I weighed right before and with the same clothes on, and my scale is maybe like 1 or 2 pound difference, not more than 2 pounds. So
close enough.
It's accurate enough.
I've noticed. So I have 3 different scales now. No, yeah, 3. Long story, and we don't need to get into it, but it's been just replacing for other features over time, basically. But I've kept the other ones because they still worked. They just went in a box for a while, and I did compare each of them, like 2 different weigh-ins as I transitioned, and they were all accurate to within 0.1 pound of each other. So I feel like they've got to be more or less accurate. I don't know why, other than just talking about accuracy of scales, that even came to mind. But I thought it was odd that I went through at least comparison testing them instead of just swapping them. Then again, at this point, I guess I've gotten to accumulate so much data. I just want to make sure I'm interpreting it in, roughly the same.
Same baselines.
Yeah.
There's I'm going to tell you, you're going to hate me for this, but there's a really good software suite for statistics for Mac OS. I think it was, I don't know if it started on Mac OS, but like I saw it like in the, I think I only saw it on OS 10, but I know that it was version 3 or 4 was on OS 10. And so I'm confident that they had a classic Mac offering as well. But it's called Prism.
I've heard of it.
That's what the scientists use.
I don't remember the specific title. There was one that was used heavily in the social sphere. I want to say it was SPSS or something similar, but it was same type of software. It just was not Mac native. You had to run it in an emulator at the time.
Fooey on the other.
Well, I'm sure the other one has a Mac native one now.
Yeah. Man, it's expensive too. It's like they're it's like old big box software prices. It's like it's because they're not selling to the consumer at all. They have their corporate pricing and their academic pricing, and then they have student license. Pretty telling about what it is, but it's a gorgeous piece of software. Even if I don't use it, I love looking at good software. So
I tend to still buy panic stuff even when I don't have a need specifically for it. I've gotten better about not doing it with everything, but I always check and I look and I see if I can come up with a something that some niche need that would feel. Um, so I don't think I have everything by them, but I've over the years almost bought everything they've had.
I get it. I get it. Um, it's like if I just did just a little more with FTP. I mean, I do remember owning Transmit at one point in time, a long time ago. But if I did just a little more, I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna buy this. So I need to justify it. I need to, like, even though it's not that much money.
Yeah, it's funny. I probably could leverage it more than I do, but I have other things that I've done over the years with just command line tools to facilitate those needs because it's all local anyway for me. That it's just not worth trying to figure out how to use the app to do it. But I did up until I made the change to Squarespace for hosting. I did use Transmit for keeping everything that I had published synchronized.
Gotcha. Does Transmit have like will it compare both sides and synchronize them appropriately?
I don't remember the full scope of its comparison features. I know the way I used it, I specifically told it to use whatever version I was telling it to publish. So if it was not the same, overwrite from local. But I'm pretty sure they have an option where you can synchronize it appropriately based on which has like the newer timestamp.
Gotcha.
I'd have to go back and look. But again, my use case was just my local copy is the copy of truth, and that's what I want published no matter what. Yeah.
So should we talk about a thing?
Probably. I put some notes together. We don't necessarily have to talk about them. It's just things that have been forming in my head in light of recent things, but I don't know that I have anything specifically formulated. So I know we were talking about continuing the AI conversation, and I'm perfectly fine with doing that and taking some of the other notes that I dropped in and actually thinking through them more and coming back to them. But if there were any initial kind of gut thoughts or statements, I figured in light of the most recent rulings, today would probably be the day to at least mention it.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing for me is it feels like there's no recourse in any way, shape, fashion, or form to try to right the egregious errors of the Supreme Court. And I need to kind of sit with that and figure out my thoughts on it.
Well, I look at it and it's like a significant step of progression.
Yeah. So I that's really all I have on that. So maybe we'll tease it. Maybe this will be something that comes up in an episode or two. So with that out of the way, I have a couple of pre-flight items. A couple weeks ago, I finally got around to doing some more work in the garage. Moved over a year ago. The garage was really just kind of a shove it and forget it kind of place for a lot of things. And then as we eventually got the vehicles in, it gained some level of organization, but I never went back and redid a lot of the other stuff. Well, I finally went ahead and bought another overhead rack and put it up kind of in the middle of the garage and organized the 3 overhead racks with a couple of things in mind, but that gave me the available space to actually subsequently create some floor space in the garage again, even with everything in there, and clean off the workbench and actually have a workspace available to me again. And so that's a nice little win. That was the last room that had been mostly untouched, other than making space for vehicles. And so it was nice to finally get that taken care of.
That's nice. That's really nice.
And then the other was just what when we first connected, what I was kind of alluding to. I forget how bruised and battered live roles sparring is when you're not trying to concern yourself about recovering from injury or something, and just going at it with your training partner. And I've introduced myself to that over the past week and a half, but it's good. I'm glad to be seemingly back to 100% fitness. I was actually talking to somebody at the gym today. I think the last remaining hurdle is just mental. Just kind of getting past that. Do I go, or do I limit myself another day, or that kind of thing? That
yeah.
I equate it to the same time you come back from any injury. It's tough to put into words, but it's just a matter of, do I push, or do I just go ahead and accept that I'm good, and or do I have some arbitrary limit that I kind of feel out? And I think I'm about at that point where the last remaining little hurdle is just to mentally not even think about it anymore.
Yeah, I've got to. Yeah, I was gonna say, you've got to find that balance between, like, okay, I feel like I've healed enough. I need to find out, but I also don't want to re-injure myself because I'm trying too early. So it's always tricky.
And then with that, I think we can go into the teaser from last episode.
Is that where we were going to talk about the difference between human intelligence and artificial intelligence?
Well, the thing that came up, there was a brief statement that you mentioned as a teaser, and I had a very quick statement in response to, which was the question about, is it wrong to have a relationship with a cyborg, which is along the same lines, a continuation of the AI versus normal intelligence.
Yeah.
But when you made the comment, I went ahead and made note of it as we put in the placeholder that would be a follow-up or a teaser for continuing the discussion. So we can pick up there, or we can pick up with some subset leading to that. I don't have strong feelings either way.
Nor do I.
I kind of, the comment that I made, the one response that I mentioned was that because the question, I think the way you posed it was if we were even there yet, or what it may be. I don't remember the exact phrasing now. I didn't think to go back and listen. But the response I posed was, are we maybe there already with the current state of AI? Wouldn't it be similar to just taking advantage of someone mentally deficient as a human? Because you could put the current incarnation of AI into a human-like body and be not really a fully functional cyborg, but functional enough. And so the parallel, or the question I was drawing just basically was, is it something that you could take advantage of?
Right. Is that something that we should allow to give consent, or is it something that is not able to give consent? It doesn't have the ability to consent. Where's that? Where's that? Is it sentience, or the emergent property of self-aware? Well, I don't even know where to, how to think about it.
Well, and I think it's difficult too, because if we reach a point where we have an actual, like, sci-fi style cyborg that can think and maybe not feel, but can somewhat emulate emotional response, is that something that should be treated more human-like with regard to consent, or would we close the door on that based on it being classified as nothing more than a tool, for lack of better phrasing?
Well, I think that you should, I'll take the example of digital assistants, which we are going to say they're not self-aware. They are not, still struggling with the terminology, but for all intents and purposes, they can't give consent because they are algorithms. They're just responding to prompts. But God damn it, so are we.
Yeah, this is what led us to that kind of brief teaser, was that the most intelligent AI, or no, the least intelligent AI could theoretically be more intelligent than the worst of non-incapacitated humans, I think is how it was phrased, or humans like the lowest common denominator of a human without some sort of deficiency. That intelligence level could be on par with AI in its current state. And if that's the case, then how do you treat AI? Like how do you categorize it? If you put it in something that doesn't have guardrails and doesn't restrict it to being just a tool or a response based type of thing, would that version of it be akin to a relatively unintelligent person?
Yeah, I don't know because, well, one of the differences is like you made the comment is like, well, if you could install it into a human-like body, well, there's something that's entirely different from humanity. Is we are our, we identify as our vessel. Like we don't identify as the thing controlling our vessel. I mean, I've seen like I've seen someone say, your brain is trapped inside of a bone machine that is wrapped in, muscle and other tissues, and that's how you get around. But that's not how we identify. We identify as our entire vessel, and that's something definitely different with the example that you stated.
Well, it could be only because we think of it that way, right? I mean, if you were to not have the current restrictions, if you were just to install whatever model for AI into this form and let it ask questions and accept inputs and change itself as far as behaviors or responses or inputs, outputs based on those processes, just like a human would, it may or may not differentiate after a short time between its software and the entirety of what it has become.
Right. So it's like, at that point, it's like, if you could keep your consciousness and have a disposable body and update it and renew it and get an entirely new one every so often as needed, how much would it bother you if somebody damaged your body versus damaged you inside of your body, especially, not being able to actually change bodies? Like, I think it does make a difference. I'm not, whereas it's like, if we were to think about our vehicles in that way, it's like, yeah, if somebody damages my vehicle, that's upsetting to me because, somebody, there's a sense of disrespect from that, but it's not the same as if they attacked me, like my body.
I certainly follow the train of thought, but I don't know that I agree that that's an equivalency. And I think it's just because let's take the human side first. If we take the approach that our consciousness and general capacity and knowledge, etc., is something that could be transferred from one body to another, we would view it as an evolution of humanity because we haven't known that capability. Or I would tend to think that it would be looked at more as a evolution of humanity to an extent. More, I don't know, it might also be looked more at as a bastardization of what makes us human.
Right.
But at the same time, that's because we have this concept of us being more than just what our brain is, when in reality we are our brain. I mean, we have other things that support the functioning of the brain, but we are our brains. I mean, that's what makes us us. So you could say that fair. So you could say that we just don't like the parallel to software running on something else because we don't like to accept that limitation for us. I mean, I don't know, it's tricky because I do get the idea that at this point, you damage us, you damage us. Like we're
right.
done for.
We're for all intents and purposes, you cannot separate our consciousness from our vessel.
Right. You could make a similar argument though about some piece of code that has been installed on a thing and has evolved and learned within that thing, if some central component was destroyed, the same version of that thing would never exist again, theoretically. It would not have the same learning and inputs and outputs, because even if you tried to recreate it perfectly, there would be some difference along the way. Again, assuming that it's actual learning and not just some level of algorithmic response to an input. But then again, I think that argument falls flat too, because you could say that human response is an algorithmic response to an input.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. So, like, all these things that we're trying to use to differentiate machines from humans is, like you said, falling flat. So it's, I think we're, at a place where it's like somehow we feel like that, we think there's a difference. We feel like there's a difference, but it's getting more and more difficult to articulate the difference. So I think that, we can just, it's probably a good idea to start thinking about how we're not different and think about how that should, go back to, circling, back to the question that you posed of like, how do we know that we're not, are we doing things to machines that would be the equivalent of a person that has some sort of handicap. And I think in that case, it's like, well, then if that is the case, I think always with the case should be that whether it is a human or a machine, if they are not the right age and they cannot consent or not old enough to consent, then the answer is, no, it's not okay.
Yeah, the difficulty with that is we don't have the same level of measurement in relation to, let's say, a cyborg, because one, we're not at a point of them existing in this form that we're talking about anyway yet, and two, age would certainly not be the equivalency for understanding any benchmark for understanding consent with regard to a machine. It's actually kind of stupid that we use age as a benchmark anyway, but that's a whole different tangent. But in their current incarnations or versions, everything that you can point to as AI, you could point to it as a tool. So I think the more interesting question is, when does it transition from being a tool to being something where it's not just a tool? And I think for me, the answer to that is when there are no longer programmatic guardrails limiting its capacity to do something. And I don't know that I necessarily agree with that answer completely either, but that's definitely a step. Because as long as it is contained in this, I'm asking you to do this thing, whatever it may mean computationally, and then give me the results, I feel like that can stay squarely in the realm of it being a tool. At the point that it can manipulate an appendage, I start to question a little more. You could certainly still call it a tool if it's just like a robotic arm, but I could see someone trying to use that for other purposes as well.
I mean, there are machines out there that are designed to do that sort of thing. So for both.
Yeah, and I guess the distinction I'm making with that is more when the software has control over it and it's not responding to just inputs. You know what I mean? Or
Right.
that's not maybe not the best way to describe it either.
No, but I get what you're saying, but it's like at this point it is no longer reliant on developers. It is able to, it can interact with developers, it can do things, but it doesn't necessarily, is necessarily reliant, I guess.
It's not in a state of waiting for direction.
Right, where it can be, I guess that's the difference there. Then it's something that can be, it has a will, or it has self direction.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I was trying to figure out a better way to phrase it than will, because I don't necessarily think that I don't think it has to be that.
It has invasive thoughts.
Yeah, I like self direction. I like the ability for it to manipulate what it's doing based on what it reads or senses in some capacity.
Because that's what we do.
Right.
And at that point, it's like, at that point you start to wonder, it's like, well, did we create it with software that doesn't know to make the right decision? Or, what is the difference between, is this robot just uninformed or is it actually just slutty? So,
I mean,
that can be a thing. Because like when we think about that with people, is like, do they just not know, or are they just, that is their preference?
Yeah, I mean, there's not really a better way to put it, I don't think. What I was laughing at is that you could boil down the same question to any thing, right? Or not necessarily thing, but any conscious thing. I mean,
certainly people.
Thing. Yeah. And so
that's what I was going for. I was trying to say, like, how would we say this to people? And if we can say that about, machines, then it's time they start being treated like people. But then it's like, okay, well, what do the people want to do? Like, what do they, because a machine may have very different, machine has very different preferences. I want to, I think of C-3PO thanking the maker for the hot, I think he had a hot oil bath in Star Wars. And it's just like, well, that's not something we would want, but it's something relatable. But we can compare and relate to it. But yeah,
I mean,
I'm not sure where I was going with that.
I was just going to respond at that point. It's not really any different than what's enjoyable in different cultures. Some might prefer a cold plunge as opposed to a hot shower. Same type of difference.
Oh, definitely, most definitely.
Or a mud bath or whatever instead of clean fresh water kind of thing. Like
some people like some people like hot showers, some people like hot baths, some people like cold showers. I don't know anyone that likes cold baths. I never hear that as being a thing. But you just said a cold plunge, so I am corrected by my own self.
Well, and I wouldn't necessarily say that those are the same thing either. There might be somebody out there who likes a cold bath. I certainly have not heard of it either, but
I am sure somebody out there does like a cold bath, and it's just not as common as those other three. So,
and I would also expect the temperature for a quote unquote cold bath to be very different than the temperature of a cold plunge too. So,
for sure. Anyway, where does that take us?
To the same level of confusion we ended the last episode on.
Oh, that's right. And I think that's how it's going to be for, it's like, I remember once after watching Interstellar for the first time, two friends were discussing it, and they start, after about 15 minutes of them, I'm like watching them discuss it. I'm like, I'm not jumping into the conversation, because I realized they're trying to solve the problem with, quantum physics and astrophysics. And I just remember after about 15 minutes, I was just like, hey, that there are people that have their PhDs in this field, and they think about this for a living, and they haven't solved these problems yet either. I don't think we're going to solve them tonight. And they just kind of looked at each other and looked at me, and they're like, yeah, you're right. So it was, it's a little bit...
It's very similar that neither one of us work in an AI space.
No, and we're trying to solve these problems, and we are not. We're just, muddling our way about.
I do think it's applicable as far as in our general wheelhouse, though, as we've talked about different things from a human perspective, to at least pose the questions just in general. I wouldn't say that we have the expertise to try to answer some of these questions, but we're also not attacking how that gets defined as much as musing where those lines could be drawn. And I do think there's a distinction there.
I do too. We're certainly not experts, but we are also not lay people. There's some level of like familiarity with the industry and general interest in there, both personal and professional. Yeah, I did not mean to discredit our conversation in that way, but yeah.
I didn't take it that way either. I just wanted to point out that I think there's a different line of discussion or inquiry there that makes it more applicable to what we generally do with everything.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't really have a good answer for it. What's bugging me most is that I don't have a way of phrasing the transition from tool to something more than tool, but not actually autonomous. And I think it's just because we don't have that in existence yet. So nobody has thought of what it means to give it a moniker. But it bothers me that there could be more distinctions, and I can't think of them because I can't think of that distinction other than
Yeah,
recognizing that it exists.
it could be in much smaller circles where in the field of AI, and that uh, there may be better discussions happening. I'm hoping there are better discussions happening, and this may have been laid out. It just hasn't made it out to at least where we like to swim, and it makes me. I think that just I don't know. I'm in the same boat as you. I'm just still trying to figure out how to even just draw, where every time I think, oh, maybe a line can go here, I'm like, oh wait, here's the reason why it maybe shouldn't, and so it's always, I feel like it's best to have a dry erase marker to draw these lines and be able to quickly remove and redraw.
I guess we could round it out real quick with a semi-related topic. Are there is there anything that is some level of AI from a functional perspective that you have found overly useful or that you tend to use relatively often?
Oh, just a typical prompt, like make sure, can I say, I've written some prose, and I'm like, say this better for me, or come up with these. Honestly, like using ChatGPT for recipe ideas, pretty fantastic. And creating a grocery list, pretty fantastic. It's because it's low hanging fruit, and I just don't want to do it. And the fact that I can say, give me 3 ideas for vegetarian meals and what ingredients I should buy for it. I get the recipe, I get the ingredients, I know where to go shop for it. It's pretty fantastic. So again, it's not a big game changer, and it's fairly low hanging fruit, but I do like it, and just being able to, whenever, like, a lot of times I'll write something and I'll think, oh, write it better for me under whatever, there'll be various, it might be like, make this more professional, or make this, whatever. And it's just like, it's nice to be able to do that now.
Yeah.
How about you?
Basically the same. My use case is slightly different. It's only different as far as the theme in general, but it's the same basic principle. So I would say the biggest surprise, maybe, is a good way to think of it. I've generated multiple logos now that are actually now part of branding and use for my diverse
Nice.
projects. All of them were AI generated.
Oh, that's awesome.
Multiple revisions and a couple of tweaks. So I don't think I took any one of them straight from what was generated and used it without a couple of minor hand adjustments. But to me, that's the perfect use case for AI, is to give me a starting point. And so I've done that with a lot of pretty much anything that I need to write short text snippets for. I will say, here are the general parameters, and here's what I want to convey. Give me a starting point, kind of thing. And then I'll take that and edit it to actually be my voice. And sometimes it's relatively close. Sometimes I do a lot of rewriting, but it's been useful to have a starting point. And I think that's the main use case I have for it, is because there's nothing worse when you're trying to be creative than looking at a blank sheet of paper.
Yeah. We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.